The leaked illustration and early spoiler for Volume 3 of the third year arc are finally out. And I just want to say we finally got a volume that is worthy of the expectation. After the previous two volumes only gave us a mediocre exam without any excitement on it, this volume finally decided to give us full action without any further ado. Starting from the trial reading, it's decided that the new island exam will be a paintball game between the 4 classes. The rules of the exam are complicated, but it's basically just eliminating the VIP from the other classes with a paintball until the time runs out. Each class needs to pick one commander who could monitor the GPS of every student, but they cannot leave the starting point. The commander for Ayanokoji's class is Shimazaki, while the other classes have Matsushita, Kaneda, and finally Ichinose for Ichinose's class. Since Ayanokoji's class is full of unathletic students, he decided to become a guard so he could play offense and defense against the other classes. It's true that Ayanokoji's class has the most disadvantages in this exam, so they really need to utilize every physical ability that Ayanokoji has. However, just a few moments after the exam begins, Ayanokoji's class gets a surprise attack from Ryuen's class. From Ryuen's perspective, the longer they give Ayanokoji time to think, the harder it will be to defeat him, so he immediately chooses to attack them before Ayanokoji manages to do anything. Their surprise attack succeed in eliminating 15 students from Ayanokoji's class, including Nishikawa, who is one of 3 VIP, while Ryuen's class only lose 3 students. Kido sacrificed himself so Ayanokoji and the others could escape. Turns out Ryuen already used the commander's right to turn off every student's GPS for that surprise attack, and unfortunately Shimazaki cannot realize it on time to warn Ayanokoji. However, Ichinose actually realized the abnormality in their GPS, but since the commanders cannot talk to each other, she could only give a warning to Shimazaki through her eyes, but once again, he failed to realize it. As a result, only a few hours after the exam started, Ayanokoji's class already lost almost half of their students. This disadvantage later gives them a hard time that forced them to play defense, and even when Ayanokoji lead them to collect supplies, they are once again attacked by some of the students from Ryuen's class, resulting in another few losses, including Morishita, who died as a hero. At that point, the other 3 classes already predicted that Ayanokoji's class would end up in the last place in this exam, but when Ichinose heard about it from Kobashi, she just smiled and said that she would never let Ayanokoji lose. It turns out Ichinose already understands Ayanokoji's intention behind his class disadvantage. Ichinose knows that someone like Ayanokoji wouldn't make a careless mistake such as fail to anticipate a surprise attack, so this failure of Ayanokoji must have been meant to create the cooperation between their classes. At the end, Ichinose accepts the rest of Ayanokoji's class into their tent, and she even orders her classmates to follow Ayanokoji's command. With more than 50 students combined, they could easily gather supplies and handle the other 2 classes. When Kanzaki confirms their cooperation with Ayanokoji, Ayanokoji makes it clear that he will give Ichinose's class the first position in this exam, but Kanzaki doubting his real intention. Kanzaki believes Ayanokoji doesn't actually need Ichinose in her class, because he knows how capable Ayanokoji is, and how he could actually win the exam even if he is alone. Ayanokoji doesn't answer him, but he reminds himself about the ideal outcome that he wanted to reach. He wanted to bring Ichinose class to equal footing with the other 3 classes, and help them grow so they could compete on their own. At the end, Ayanokoji invites Kanzaki to accompany him to the gym after the island exam is over, saying that he wants Kanzaki to know him better. And now let's see what Horikita's class had been up to ever since the exam started. After choosing their commander, they decide to move to the north for better access to the whole island. However, Koenji decides to leave the colony and wander the island on his own. According to Ayanokoji, Koenji's GPS is moving very fast to the point that he knows it is Koenji even without using the N-list. Koenji traveled far into the forest and coincidentally met with 10 students from Ryuen's class including Komiya. Koenji managed to defeat them easily, leaving only Morifuji the VIP. However, Koenji doesn't do it because he wants to help his class, but simply because he is interested in shooting a gun. At the end, he let Morifuji go as long as she left the supply behind, and Koenji took the supply to enjoy his vacation on the island and voluntarily leave on the 3rd day. For Koenji, this exam is simply a vacation for him, so his classmates also don't expect anything from him. Left by Koenji, Horikita's class decide to take it easy and play defense for a while to observe the situation. They talked about Ayanokoji's class situation after the surprise attack and wondered if they really need to pay special attention to Ayanokoji. It turns out Horikita already asked Matsushita to mark Ayanokoji's GPS so they could always know where he is going. Even if Ayanokoji's class suffer a great loss thanks to Ryuen, Horikita still cannot take it easy. The news about Ichinose's class accepting Ayanokoji's class member reached her ears, and she asked Kei if she knew something about it. Kei once again muttered her theory from the previous volume, but after that, she surprisingly asked whether Horikita really liked Ayanokoji or not. Their conversation really feels out of place, but Kei keep pressuring Horikita to answer. Even when Horikita deny it, Kei is not satisfied with her answer because Horikita took a few moments to answer. However, before their conversation goes any deeper, a gunshot destroys the entire class's calmness, and Ayanokoji comes to destroy them. Ayanokoji asked Shimazaki to turn off his GPS for 30 minutes so Horikita wouldn't know that Ayanokoji had already infiltrated their base. In a single surprise attack, Ayanokoji managed to eliminate 3 students including Onodera, but got surrounded by Ike and the others. Without any way to defend, Ayanokoji got shot from multiple directions. The signal from his wristwatch tells him he is out from the exam, and Ika shouts out loud celebrating his victory. However, Horikita immediately realized Ayanokoji's true intention. When Ika and the others shot Ayanokoji, the clock had already passed 6 p.m., so their shot was considered invalid. Ayanokoji did not out from the exam. On the contrary, Ika and the others are disqualified because they fired a shot after the exam had ended for the day, which means Ayanokoji successfully eliminated 7 members of Horikita's class by himself. Not only he eliminate them, infiltrating Horikita's class base camp give Ayanokoji a chance to observe their secret. When Ayanokoji was attacking them, he saw some people immediately tried to protect certain students such as Sudo protecting Sato, so Ayanokoji managed to predict all of their VIP, which are Sato, Yukimura, and Michan. Ayanokoji later shared that info with the other 2 classes, so Horikita's class VIP identity ended up exposed to everyone. As if eliminating 7 of them is not enough, Ayanokoji set his tent in a really close spot to the others, and spent the night accepting angry gaze from his former classmates. What Ayanokoji did is a real provocation, because when the exam starts the next day, he will immediately be surrounded by the entire Class A. However, when the exam nearly started again at 9 a.m., Ayanokoji just casually walking and ran to the forest. They tried to catch him, but Ayanokoji simply slipped away just like that. Thanks to Ayanokoji spreading their VIP identity, all 3 classes start attacking Horikita's class without mercy. Their guard fell one by one, leaving the VIP unguarded and finally wiped out, sealing the fate of Horikita's class at the last position. I still didn't get a lot of detail about what happened in the middle of the exam, but the climax of the exam is the battle between Ayanokoji and Ryuen. Ayanokoji's class is down to only 1 VIP, and the guards left are only Ayanokoji and Yamamura, while Ryuen's class also has 1 VIP left, with Ryuen and Ibuki as the guards. Ayanokoji chose to face both of them by himself, but after he managed to eliminate Ibuki, he ran out of bullet and is forced to do the absolute cinema pose. However, Ryuen didn't immediately shoot him to death, because he wanted to enjoy the sensation of absolute victory that he had longed for ever since Volume 7. Looking for an opportunity, Ayanokoji began to provoke Ryuen, saying that Yamamura was already behind him, ready to shoot. Hearing that, Ryuen begins to hesitate and turn around to see what is behind him. However, in that exact moment, Ayanokoji took out a paint bullet from the back of his hand and threw it to Ryuen. It stated that a normal throw wouldn't be able to break the paint bullet, but since this is Ayanokoji who threw it, the paint bullet breaks and eliminate Ryuen on the spot. But at the same time, Ryuen pulls the trigger and eliminate Ayanokoji, ending the fight with a double KO. Since Ichinose's class still has 2 VIP left, they managed to get the first position, followed by Ayanokoji's class with 1 VIP plus Yamamura, who didn't fire a single bullet ever since the exam started. 4 days and 3 nights have finally passed, and Ayanokoji tries to find Hiyori whom he didn't see for the entire exam. However, ignoring their stress and fatigue, the teachers ask them to gather and announce that the survival game has officially ended. However, without any break, the real island exam will finally begin. Turns out the survival game is just a warm-up, and the first and second year students are not waiting on the ship for nothing. So in the next volume, we will still have the uninhabited island exam. For a note, it seems the next volume will be delayed for 1 or 2 months, so let's savor every bit of this new volume for the time being. There are a few other things that happened in this volume, but they don't really have any impact on the whole story. For example, after being hyped through her monologue, Hiyori doesn't really have a lot of scenes in this new volume. She has some scenes where she talks with Ryuen, but their dialogue is pretty much just Hiyori convincing Ryuen that she is loyal to the class, and she will not hesitate no matter who she is fighting for. There is also a scene where Ayanokoji asks some questions to Shiraishi. Shiraishi's side story pretty much confirms that Nishikawa has a thing for Shiraishi, but Shiraishi confessed that she actually likes Ayanokoji to her classmate. However, what Ayanokoji questioning is why Shiraishi really trusts Ayanokoji could win even though they already lost half of their classmates. Talking to Shiraishi made Ayanokoji speculate a few things, but he strongly believed that Shiraishi knew about him even before his transfer, and maybe she has a tie with Sakai Yanagi. However, the most exciting part is the battle between Hashimoto and Hirata. After almost never winning against anyone, Hirata finally shows what he is capable of when he gets serious. This part of the novel shows a completely different side of Hirata, who is usually cheerful and kind, but now he is quiet and scary, just like when Yamauchi got expelled. This scene happened after Ayanokoji eliminated 7 students from Horikita's class and exposed their VIP. Hirata's group faced attack from both sides, but they managed to give a good fight and cornered Hashimoto. Hashimoto tried to provoke him by talking about Ayanokoji leaving them, but even though Hirata is a bit disturbed, he still manages to shoot Hashimoto. However, even though Hashimoto is already out, Hirata is still pointing his gun toward him. Hirata would be disqualified if he shot Hashimoto, but he keeps pointing his gun at his forehead. It was the moment where Hashimoto actually felt fear, but after a moment of silence, Hirata just turned his back and went to aid his classmates. Hirata never became a black horse on my list, but it seems this scene will make us change our judgment on him. And the last part is how Ayanokoji perceives this exam in his mind. Even through all the disadvantage and the risk of losing, Ayanokoji admit that he's still not using his ability to the fullest. He didn't run as fast as he could, or shoot the enemy as accurately as he could. Ayanokoji admit that he has no reason to get serious, and to keep me wondering if his entire goal about the battle between the 4 classes really has an actual meaning. However, that is for Ayanokoji to decide, and as the readers, we should just enjoy what kind of scheme he presented to us.